Appreciate the difficulty of trying to thread through the weaving process that we're currently in as a result of failure of the President to negotiate, the failure of the Senate to pass appropriations bills, and the failure of a dialogue to go forward. I opposed the President's sequestration. It resulted in 12,000 people being furloughed in my community. I'm opposed to the shutdown, which has resulted in 8,700 people being furloughed from my community. But Mr. Hale, I want to walk you through some of the timing for this. The Pay Our Military Act, passed by the House, passed by the Senate, signed by the President, you indicated in your testimony was effective September 30th. You also say that the people who were furloughed because of a lapse of appropriations. As you know, the lapse of appropriations for the rest of the government occurred on October 1st. The Pay Our Military Act was effective September 30th. So for the people who were covered under Pay Our Military Act, and based upon the DOD's interpretation, Mr. Hale, based upon the DOD's interpretation, as we now know from that interpretation, the fact that they are back to work. We know who those people are. They're knowable as to who DOD says fall under Pay Our Military Act. I believe our version and view is broader, but there's some difficulty with the language, as I understand. But we know who these people are who are back to work. If they were covered by appropriations that occurred on September 30th, and they were furloughed for the week, they were not furloughed as a result of a lapse of appropriations. I mean, the President signed this bill, but yet the President furloughed them anyway, and the Department of Defense furloughed them anyway. So I'm very concerned by the language of use of they were furloughed by the lapse of appropriations. Mr. Hale, you did say that the Pay Our Military Act was effective September 30th prior to the lapse of appropriations, did you not? My second concern, Mr. Taylor, is the issue that you have on the interpretation. I have Secretary's interpretation of the Pay Our Military Act, and we're all very concerned about it. They have inserted the word active service. Mr. Hale, I appreciate you said that it would have been a lot simpler if we had not given the Secretary authority, and it certainly would have been a lot simpler if we'd said all. but nonetheless, the Secretary's determination inserts words that are not in this. I have the bill in front of me, the Pay Our Military Act, and it says allowances to members of the armed forces as defined in a section. It's got a definitional section, which I understand goes to the issue of Army, Navy's, Marines, and like. Mr. Taylor, why did they insert the word active?
Sir, if you refer back to paragraph 1.
I have it in front of me.
Okay. To provide pay and allowances to members of the armed forces as defined in section 101A4, including reserve components thereof, comma, who perform active service during such period.
Is that where you get the word active?
Yes, that is
okay,
where we get the word active.
Mr. Taylor, I think we all understand that a word that says including means that a larger subset of the prior sentence is what it's taking from. It doesn't say limited to. It says including. You don't use the word including unless there's a broader category that you're taking it from. So, Mr. Hale, I appreciate you told me all of the difficulty of that the Secretary had to certify something, and so he thought he should take a subset less. But don't you agree that he could have taken a broader version of this, especially since, as Mr. Taylor just agreed, the language is inconclusive?
Well, I'll quote the Secretary that he was acting on advice of the Department of Justice, and he made that statement in his remarks.
And that's what
we
accept
the Department of Justice's opinion.
Okay,
let me go to the effective.
Mrs. Hale, just a second. That's what I was actually getting to. I appreciate that was your answer. Who in the administration was in touch concerning the interpretation of this language?
I mean, we're not going to get into
I do want you to get into it because this is a hearing and we're on interpretation. I'd like to know who, not agencies, who told the Secretary that he was to interpret this more narrowly than Mr. Taylor and I just discussed is obviously broader.
I mean, the Department of Justice was the person or the organization, and we're not going to discuss the internal discussions.
Mr. Hale, this is Congress. We have an ability to ask you the question of who. You can't just say some nameless, faceless bureaucrat, made the determination of the interpretation of our law. You were in touch with people. Who was it?
I'm not going to discuss the internal discussions with the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of the Attorney General. Well,
I'm very concerned also, Mr. Chairman, about the fact that the Secretary's communication also indicates that there could be additional furloughs, and I'm concerned as to who may be at the table in determining whether additional furloughs occur. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Secretary, if you could finish those questions, Mr. Turner, for